Okay, Mr. Harper, the first thing I'd like to ask you, for the record, can you confirm that you were not invited or even approached by BDO to participate in this report?
Yes, I can confirm that.
Difficult question, possibly, but what is your feelings on the motivation, perhaps, for why you were not asked to participate?
Well, I mean, you'll understand that this is probably pure speculation on my part, but my view on it is that if I had been invited to comment or answer questions from BDO, I would have given a contradictory explanation and answer to practically every one of the conclusions which criticised me in the review. Now, the only conclusion I can come to as to why I wasn't asked to give those contradictory explanations was that either because they had been told to, or they were under pressure not to speak to me and not to receive and consider the alternative explanations to the conclusions that they came to in their report.
Right. Obviously, we have not had a formal interview with BDO yet, but myself and the scrutiny officer did meet with BDO a couple of days ago, and it was interesting that they actually state that they did request to be able to interview you, but this was blocked, allegedly by the acting chief officer at the time, which would have been Mr. Walcott. Have you got any thoughts on that? Were you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of that because I emailed the Home Affairs Minister, Mr. Lamarcon, some weeks ago and asked him why BDO had not interviewed me. Asked him whose instructions the BDO it was that I should not be interviewed, and asked if it was him or someone else. Mr. Lamarcon replied to me and said that he had had nothing whatsoever to do with the BDO terms of reference, and that he had stayed independent and didn't know. So I emailed him back and said to him, well, look, you must have delegated this responsibility to someone. Somebody has told BDO, if they didn't take it their own decision, somebody has told BDO to not to interview me. Can you tell me who you delegated the making of the terms of reference to? Mr. Lamarcon emailed me back fairly quickly and said, I think possibly I did have something to do with the make-up of the terms of reference, but I'm not absolutely certain. I'll check when I come back from holiday and I'll get back to you. Now, to date, I haven't heard anything from Mr. Lamarcon. My assumption was, when I saw some of the comments attributed to Mr. Warkup, that he had commissioned this report. Then I felt that it must have been either Mr. Lamarcon or Mr. Warkup that had told BDO not to approach me, but I didn't know that BDO had said that it was in fact Mr. Warkup.
Okay.
Can I just jump in? I think Deputy Tadlier here. The first question is a fairly simple one. If you had been invited to give evidence or to be consulted, would you have taken up that opportunity?
Yes, I would, absolutely.
Okay. I think the second question is, you said they were under pressure not to talk to you. Where did that pressure come from, in your opinion, or from who?
Well, it would have come from whoever it was that commissioned the report and gave them the terms of reference. As I said, I believed that it was either Mr. Lamarcon or Mr. Warkup. Mr. Lamarcon totally denied having anything to do with it at the outset, so my feelings then were that it must have been Mr. Warkup. But when Mr. Lamarcon then emailed back to me with his change of opinion and said that he might have had, I think the words that he used were, probably might have had something to do with the setting up of the terms of reference, then again that put the ball back to somewhere between Mr. Warkup and Mr. Lamarcon. So my view was that the pressure on BDO, if indeed they hadn't taken the decision themselves, and I couldn't see why they would take the decision themselves not to interview me, that it must have been coming either from the senior officer within the State Security Police or indeed Mr. Lamarcon.
And perhaps the last question for now from me, would there have been anything in the terms of reference as they're drafted which would have precluded BDO from approaching you?
I don't think I've actually seen the terms of reference, so I can't answer that, unfortunately.
I think that what I'm trying to get to, the underlying question is whether somebody was specifically, whether BDO was specifically told not to interview you, or whether they simply weren't told or they weren't encouraged to interview you. There's perhaps a difference there.
Well, I think if they were looking to do a professional job, then I think that they would have had to have been told specifically not to interview me. Otherwise, I think that they would have been looking to seek an explanation for some of the things that were in their report. So my belief was that they were specifically told not to interview me.
Mr. Harper, Deputy Pittman again, before I come to my other colleagues, one question arises from what Deputy Taddy has asked you. Could you just clarify for me, you were by then an ordinary member of the public, what authority would the police have had to stop you being interviewed, if any, that you're aware of?
They would have had absolutely no authority whatsoever, and if an instruction was given to BDO not to interview me, I would see that as a deliberate attempt to suppress the truth and another attack, another attempt to stop the evidence which supported the evidence of the abuse victims from being given a proper airing. I don't think there was any lawful reason or any lawful authority, indeed, why BDO should have been told not to interview me.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harper, Roy Hershey here. From your contacts, there still may have been in the States of Jersey Police. Did any of them inform you that the review was indeed underway?
No, nobody informed me that BDO were carrying out a report. I knew that Wiltshire were carrying out a discipline inquiry into Mr. Power's suspension and the circumstances around that. I picked up somewhere along the line that there had been criticism of the financial management of the investigation, but at no time was I ever told by anybody, State of Jersey Police or anybody else, that BDO or any firm of auditors were carrying out an investigation into the financial management of the inquiry.
Okay, thank you. You said you picked it up somewhere along the line. Roy Harris here again, Mr. Harper. Can you tell us how you picked it up?
Yeah, it was obviously on the internet somewhere, and it was through media coverage that there had been criticisms. Now, I didn't know where that criticism was coming from. I didn't know what it had been based on, and I picked it up in either one of the blogs or in some sort of newspaper coverage. I'm not absolutely certain now at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Harper is Deputy Wembley. Just to put it in context, this fact that you were not approached, could you give us maybe cases of comparable cases to this where an investigation is underway, either in Jersey or elsewhere in your previous experience, and how that was handled in terms of, if you like, the main witness not being approached?
Well, for the one that I know, the one that I know of best, which is probably the best known publicly, was the case of the Department of Trade and Industry versus Maxwell, where a report was an investigation was carried out into his dealings, and he was the subject of serious criticism in that, and the High Court ruled, and I think my memory is not 100% on the, I think it was in, I was able to put it in the written submission, but the High Court in London were very critical and stated that in any sort of investigation such as this, where someone is to be criticised in it, they should be be made aware of the criticisms, be interviewed and be given an opportunity to comment on those criticisms and to present any evidence that he has got. Now, this is a clear breach of that, and this covered inquiries, according to the High Court, which were being carried out on behalf of governments or on behalf of public bodies. And my view is that this was a clear breach of those principles, as well as a clear breach of the codes of conduct laid down by the accountancy regulation body, which states also that all reports being carried out by companies of accountants must be seen to be fair and objective and to take all points of view into consideration.
Yes, on that last point, are you, just as a sort of to take that to its end now, are you actually doing anything about that? I think you mentioned something about that. taking
Yes, I did. I
action?
mean, I complained to the regulatory body, and they came back, and despite the fact that their own codes of practice state that they will investigate cases where firms of accountants do not comply with their codes of practice, they felt that although I had made allegations against BDO that they had failed to meet with these, they didn't think that I had proved it beyond all reasonable doubt. Now, I went back to them again and said, well, look, it's not for me to prove beyond reasonable doubt. I've given you the evidence. You're the one who was supposed to investigate it. But they came back to me and told me they didn't think it was within their remit.